Good evening, dear friends. Thank you very much for joining us here at the Turkish-Canadian Chamber of Commerce Women's Chapter Networking event. And as such, I am the one who has the great honor and pleasure to introduce to you our keynote speaker tonight, Isabel Hoffmann. Isabel Hoffmann has embodied the entrepreneur spirit since she was 19 years old when she started her first company. And since then, she has founded another 7 companies, bringing them from $0 to 75 million. Now that is a track record. As an international business lawyer with startups, I know that that is not usually done. It's an achievement. In her career, she has negotiated strategic investments with groups such as CBS Corporation and Mitsubishi International. She has raised capital on Bay Street and on Wall Street. She has also shared her experiences as an entrepreneur by teaching MBA-level courses on entrepreneurism for 11 years at the University of Porto. Isabel has spoken at conferences all over the world. She has won many awards, including the Women in Technology Award presented by Bell Canada and the Toronto Sun, Canadian Women Entrepreneur of the Year Award presented by the University of Toronto, Top 40 Under 40 Award presented by the Financial Post, CIBC, and Caldwell Partners, and Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur Year of the Award, among others. The list goes on. Tonight, she is here to tell us, hopefully, a bit about her experiences as an entrepreneur, but especially to tell us about her latest, most current startup. I'll let her tell you, but from what I have heard of it, it sounds awfully exciting and futuristic. Please welcome the dynamic go-getter, Isabel Hoffmann.
Thank you, Ella, and thank you very much for being here tonight and for listening to me. I founded 9 companies, actually 14, but we don't say the holding companies and the real estate companies. We just talk about the real companies. And just to correct Ella, not all my companies went from 0 to 75. One of my companies went from 0 to 75. I've had failures and I've had successes. And I did have a failure in internet that we blew up like every single internet company in 2000 when the bubble burst. So most of my companies have started by identifying a need in the industry and thinking about how to fulfill that need. My latest company, Telspec, actually has something then that there is a need, in fact, for the industry, but there is a personal story behind that Telspec. My daughter fell sick when we moved from Europe to North America. She was born here in Canada in the 90s and late 90s, and after my internet blow up, I was actually caught in Europe with a 9/11, trying to return to New York and not having a flight because of 9/11. And so I stayed in Europe, and my daughter was at the time 2 years old, and she was raised in Europe. And she was happy, she was healthy. I have amazing photographs of how happy she was. We lived in Portugal by the sea. She went to a private international school because she and my son did not speak Portuguese. And then we moved here. In 2010, actually 2011 exactly, because of the crisis that the Southern European countries faced from 2008 to 2011. And upon arriving to Canada, within 3 months, my daughter started feeling less and less energetic, with more and more rashes on the skin, to the point that those rashes became hives, and those hives left marks, and those marks would not go away. And from that, she developed angioedema, which is the swelling of the local swelling of the skin. And sometimes she would have swollen lips. At a time, she would have swollen face, swollen football or a small ball on the forehead, and so on. Hands that could not close, feet that could not go to the floor. And it was clearly that she had some allergy of some sorts. We went to many doctors. I think at one point I counted, we went to 28 doctors in Toronto, and there was never an answer. Everybody was saying, yeah, she's allergic, and we've done the tests, but we cannot tell exactly to what she's allergic. She did a test for celiac, and yes, she was celiac, but the allergies continued to show up. And although gluten was taken out of her diet, and eventually she was actually bedridden with very low blood pressure. And at that stage, I became very concerned that I may actually lose my daughter. She could not get up because the blood pressure was so low. Her blood pressure was 50/80. Okay, so ridiculously low, or 80/50. And so what? After being 8 months in bed and having missed a full year of school, I decided that she could not miss a second year of school. And I also decided that all the diagnoses that I had from the doctors in Toronto were not enough. The latest diagnosis was Lyme disease, and I had gone out of my way to find every single possible Lyme disease test that exists in the world. And I did, in fact, was from a Swedish group. And our test results were negative. And so Lyme disease was also eradicated as a potential diagnosis. So I took my daughter to California, to a doctor in California, in Northern California, to be examined. And within 2 days of testing, she was diagnosed with penicillin allergies. And I wondered, well, when the doctor said that to me, I said, wait, she's not taking antibiotics, so I don't understand where this is coming from. And so he said to me, look, she's not taking antibiotics, but she has food where there is penicillin, a little bit of mold in bread, a little bit of mold in the strawberries, and plus I bet there is some also mold in the walls of a bedroom. He was right. We tested for mold. We tested 3 times for mold in the bedroom that she had, in fact, in the whole house. And we had 65% of our spores were penicillin aspergillus mold. So I moved my daughter out and start thinking, how is it possible that a 14-year-old would suffer this horrible agony for 1 year? And how is it possible that I've met so many people, when she was doing intravenous injections, there were many people like her with the same symptoms. How is it possible that I've met so many people, close to 1,000, with the same symptoms, and that no one has helped these people? Why is it that we cannot help these people by having a scanner that can scan the food? And so that is what TelSpec does. It's still a baby startup, but I have a prototype here today to show you, and I'm going to test a few things, including one of the cakes, the Turkish cakes here, which I don't know how to say the name. And you'll see that we are not doing everything yet. We certainly are not doing mold yet. We're certainly not doing pesticides, but we are doing gluten. Doing gluten, and we're doing gluten well. We're doing calories, and we're doing micronutrients, and so on. So having said that, I'm going to take you to my presentation now and talk a little about thank you, about what is in your food and why we need to know what is in our food, and how this technology will totally revolutionize food manufacturing and produce growing. Okay, so we know that everybody is concerned to a certain extent about what is in their food. People are concerned that they have allergies, and the people are concerned that they're taking too many calories. Diabetic people want to track their carbohydrates, and so on. Eventually, people are realizing that there is an association between pesticides and diseases, neurological diseases, and are starting to think we should eat organic. But even organic is not necessarily free of contamination. Depends how the soil has, what the soil has. So, yeah, and the other thing is that there's organic and organic. Some organic is certified, and organic is just simply said organic. And so people are starting to really want to know what is in that food that we're eating. And worldwide, we've had an amazing reception. If you look at our site, you'll see we have articles in every single language. From everywhere, all over the world. We have requests for this product all over the world, okay? People don't know necessarily a lot of things. So there's 3 things to the food, really. There is what we put in the food, an additive, like a food dye. There is a contamination from the soil or from the environment, like a heavy metal. And there is also a byproduct of producing the food. And acrylamide is a byproduct. And what is this fancy acrylamide word? Honey that is pasteurized typically has acrylamide. So something simple and potentially healthy for us as a carcinogen, a cancer-provoking agent. Why? Because when we pasteurize honey at high temperatures, starches create acrylamide. When we eat potato chips, very likely we have a bit of acrylamide in those potato chips. Is it dangerous? Well, Health Canada, FDA, and so on, the whole world, European health regulations will say to you that the amount of acrylamide in that substance is so low that it can potentially derive cancer. However, they do recognize to be carcinogenic. The difficulty here is that we don't have tests in the world to understand the cumulative effect of constant exposure to a carcinogen. So if you eat every day that honey, you are accumulating that carcinogen. And if you're not able to clean it from detoxify it from your body, what is the effect of that? And worse yet, we don't have enough studies in the world, we just simply don't. And these studies are hard to do because we can't do these studies with human beings, how 2 or 3 carcinogens interact between each other. So you may be eating honey and at the same time another carcinogen, and how do they affect? Is it 1 + 1 = 2, or is 1 + 1 = 100? Are we talking about binary mathematics or the normal mathematics based on 10? So we don't know. We don't have studies like that. Another thing that is also in the food, and that no one had the intention to put it in the food, is bisphenol A. Bisphenol A is a resin that is used to coat the tins in supermarkets. Some products say bisphenol A or BPA free, but a lot of products don't say anything. So it's pervasive, actually. And bisphenol A is so seriously a toxin for our health that has been forbidden in certain states in US. As you see there, it's not just a carcinogen, but it affects the fetal development. It affects, it's a obesogen. Obesogen means that it's a toxin that makes you fat. Okay? It has a neurological effect, and it disrupts your hormones as well, and it disrupts your reproductive system. So why are we placing resins of this type in our food? Okay? Telspec doesn't do bisphenol A yet, but we intend to do it. Okay? Then there is the contaminants from the environment or from the soils. A lot of soils in North America, actually in the southern part of the US, are actually contaminated with arsenic because they were originally cotton fields where cotton was grown, and there was a certain pesticide or herbicide that was used to kill the bugs that affected the cotton fields, and that pesticide actually had arsenic. Arsenic stays in the soil, therefore is a heavy metal. Today we grow rice on those soils, and therefore the rice does have some arsenic. Rice, you're welcome to Google, it typically does have arsenic because it's grown in water and attracts arsenic. So again, Telspec doesn't do arsenic today, but we intend to do it. Okay, so as you see, there's a lot of things that we should worry. I mean, an arsenic, I didn't go over what it is, but you can see there. This one actually affects your gastrointestinal system. Okay? So what we have today is actually a situation that is appalling. The growth of children's allergies is escalating. From 71 to 2011, we have 50% more children with allergies. In North America alone, in every classroom, we have 2 children with allergies. Okay? In Europe, we have more than 17 million Europeans with allergies. And the culprits, 90% of the culprits ate foods. Okay? We have it there. Milk, eggs, peanuts, tree nuts, soy, wheat, fish, and shellfish. Those are the common allergies. Okay? Today, Telspec does some of those allergens. And when we go to market, we intend to do them all except shellfish and fish, just because we don't have currently the conditions in our lab to do shellfish and fish, the physical conditions. We are actually looking for partners that have universities or colleges that are actually doing food testing to allow us to come in with our scanners so that we can build our database for the shellfish and fish. We just simply cannot have that in our current labs. Okay. By the way, our office is right here downtown in University of Toronto, very close to the University of Toronto. So, the world as a food map, as a footprint. This is the world as a footprint. We're going to be able, one day, as people start using scanners like Telspec, to map actually what people eat in different regions of the world, and understand how that food affects their health. So it is a global problem. And this problem is a problem that needs a solution. And that's what I started with my daughter and with the problems. And I thought about what would be that solution. I mean, I clearly, I hate to say to anyone, I never saw a Star Trek movie. So no, it was not Star Trek that inspired me. I actually don't watch television. I never owned a television, so I'm not very influenced by movies or television. But I thought about it. And what type of sensor could it be? And it was only by association to some studies I had done in astrophysics at the University of Toronto. I had used spectrometers to look at stars. Astrophysicists look at stars and look at the composition of the stars through spectrometers. And I thought, it could be a spectrometer, why not? And why not come up with that idea? And so the idea was a spectrometer. Now, let me explain how this works, okay? So that you understand that there's a science behind this. It's not magic. A lot of people on the internet say this is not possible, but it's happening. So you will see me right now throwing with my scanner here light at, I'm going to start with this bagel and then I'm going to do the Turkish thing. Light at this, if I can hold it properly, that scan is not good. Light at this bagel. Pretty light, right? Mm-hmm. So, what happens with that is very simple. That this phone and this scanner are connected via Bluetooth, okay? And what happens in maybe, I'm going to ask you to read this while I do another scan. Okay, this one I'm going to scan this package here. Please see the chart moving. Do not touch it. Just see the chart moving. Did you see the spectrum moving? Yes? Okay. Yeah, do not, because if you unconnect me, then I have to shut it. Okay, so I basically, what I'm getting there is what we call a spectrum. Okay? What is the spectrum? Everybody can see this little line? Okay, so light went into this package or into this bagel at a consistent wavelength, photons, very fast. It hit the molecules of the food. Some of the molecules absorb some of the energy, and they reflected back those photons. When they're reflecting back, they come back with different wavelengths. So we count the wavelength and the number of photons. On the y-axis, we have number of photons. On the x-axis, we have wavelength. Okay, wavelength. So this gives us a chart. That chart is sent to the phone, my phone, here, to go to the cloud. And when it goes to the cloud, it's interpreted by the cloud via our algorithms into what you see here, which is interpretation of what is in that food. Okay? So I'm going to pass around this again, and you can sort of scroll up. Okay? I'm going to take this scanner now. I'm going to scan it through here, and you're going to see it move. Did you see it move already? Bring it down to the color. Did you see it move?
Yeah.
Okay. And now I'm going to scan this famous Turkish. What is the
Şekerpare.
şekerpare? Okay. What does it say?
It's on 450.
It's four. It didn't move.
450.
It's always showing top. It's on the way.
No, it moved, it moved, but then when you scanned the
Okay.
dessert, it didn't.
Maybe it's, I don't know.
There's 460.
467 here. This is 100 grams of this package. I think to make it 100 grams of this, you probably have to eat quite a bit. I don't know. This is probably 15 grams package. So. It's not moving. Why is it not moving? I will see if it is getting expected. Ah, there we go. There's a light on. Because maybe it's slowly for this. Let's just move again to this guy and, oh, actually, stay this way.
There it is.
There.
500?
So 500 per 100 grams, okay? Okay. Per 100 grams. So if you eat 100 grams of these cookies, it's 500 calories. Yeah, it's high. It's very high. In fact, let's look at what it has. It has carbs, fats, and protein. It has gluten. It has eggs. It has no milk. The total sugar is 5.6 grams. That's the reason why. Okay? Now, if I don't mind, I'm going to go back here to the scan because I want to see what's happening here with you.
Shall we bring another piece of
Okay, no, it's okay. I just want to see if we're getting a scan.
There
I
it
am
is.
getting a scan.
Does it print liquid?
Yeah, this was very liquid at the
Very
bottom. I
liquid,
think that's the
doesn't
problem because
yeah.
it doesn't reflect properly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the problem. Yeah, it's not picking up like it's thinking of it as a liquid.
Yeah, we did see it move.
Yeah, it's almost.
Yeah, because it was
okay.
higher, and then now it's where it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you should have tried the Turkish food then.
I'll try this one.
There it is.
Okay.
It went up.
Yeah. Keep the other one maybe outside of, oops. So this one is also 500. Has eggs, has milk, has total sugar, 6 grams, and has sucrose, has maltose, and has glucose. Okay? So this is basically how it works. How does it work? You throw the light gets the spectrum is sent to the phone sends it to the cloud. Our cloud is actually in Amazon. Our servers do interpretation. It sends back the information in less than 3 seconds, I think. As you saw, it's going to disconnect this together. I think actually about is done with it. So now, this today is that size. Our idea is to bring that, what we call that rot, into something a bit smaller. But so we're not yet on the market because we are trying to bring these much smaller into a more handheld. As you saw, the first scan I saw stuff because it was not so good. But we have a working prototype. In fact, we have several of those scanners doing this. The difficulties here were tremendous, not only going from large sizes, but making the scanner wireless, making the scanner talk to the phone Bluetooth, making sure that the algorithms give interpretation. We use machine learning, so when we get a spectrum, we don't use typical chemometrics algorithms, which are algorithms that are used with scanners, with spectrometers. We use machine learning, okay?
You can do retail them.
Yeah, we are pre-selling them on our site. In fact, we pre-sell 2 things. We pre-sell the final product, And we sell also this beta, for in case people that want to build a database or want to be better testers or whatever. The information that you saw, some of you didn't see all the information, is basically you get a pie chart with the calories and the carbohydrates, proteins and fats. So very good for diabetic people because they can track their fats and their carbs and their calories. And then we have a bunch of ingredients with the allergens and the sugar amounts. And then if you click on an ingredient, you actually get information about that ingredient from Wikipedia. We built a wiki of food ingredients and health. And our site, you're welcome to go there. It's for free. It's open to everybody. You go on the site on the top, says Calspecopedia, and you'll see we have about 2,000 ingredients, food ingredients, and how they affect our health. Because that's another thing that I found myself doing with my daughter was reading labels at the supermarket and going, I have no idea what this word says. I mean, I don't even know how to read it, okay? Today, I know a lot of these ingredients, not all of them. For instance, tartrazine is a food dye, and this one is it's an interesting one. It's a yellow dye derived from petroleum that is put on food to make the food more yellow. Corn chips have tartrazine. There's many names for tartrazine. You could say color yellow, you could say E to 125, and you just don't know, especially when it gets to the E's. Is 120, 140, you don't know what you're eating, you don't know what you're saying. And in fact, tartrazine is actually not very good. It causes aggressiveness in children. So why put this in our food? Okay. And then we also are, right now I can't show you that on the app, but because it's not yet, we are building the app as we speak, to track calories per day, per year, per month, per whatever, to track fats, carbohydrates, and so on. And because of my daughter, for some reason, because of my daughter, I don't have the other slide, I'm sorry. Because of my daughter allergies, and we actually track how people feel after eating, so that we can tell people, like you, what exactly it is that they're allergic to. Because doing an elimination diet is really difficult. Like elimination diet is what the doctors say, you have to do this in order for us to tell you how you are allergic, what you're allergic to. And you start by eating one piece, the next day you eat the other piece, and after 21 days you are insane, okay? So we decided that we could do elimination diet kind of version on the app, okay? So in the near future, basically we see that we are going to be connected with the Internet of Things for food. We're going to be able to, as consumers, to say, I have a knowledge of the molecular level. It's very different from reading a label here, okay? I'm not reading any labels as you saw, you know. I picked up this cookie and I read the cookie. I mean, there's no label for this cookie, right? I brought this one because of being plastic, and if you want to test what it said, you could look at the label and see how close we are. But at the end of the day, the consumer is going to be educated and is going to look at it and say, not only I know what I'm eating, but I know the ingredients and I know the effects of what they do. And this is going to force a transparency on the product farming and on the food manufacturers. Today, the food manufacturers in every single country are not, they don't have to give information about the ingredients of the ingredients. So if your rice has arsenic, they don't have to write, imagine. You know, they look in the label, arsenic, right? They don't have to write this. But by law, they have to make sure that their ingredients, their raw ingredients, are clean. How many of them do? I don't know. I can't have an answer for that. But I know that if we have scandals like this, we're going to be able to force the manufacturers to really do those tests. Okay? And at the end of the day, they're going to be accountable for what they put. And our governments are going to be accountable for allowing it. Not only that, you know, the environment is dirty, but also why, you know, how we feeding people. Okay, so we're creating effectively a green revolution, a revolution where people are saying, I want my clean food, you know, and I want my soil to be clean from the arsenics and from whatever it is that the soil has. And so eventually, what we will have, oh, you have no good sound. Eventually, what we will have is actually almost a backward situation, like with the globalization. We lost it. We really lost it. We started putting so many preservatives on food so that the foods could be, produced in Chile and eaten in North America, produced in whatever and eaten whatever. Hours and hours of distance that it had a purpose because we needed to feed the world. But we're going to have to find local solutions that involve us growing local food. Solutions that involve us going back to how our grandparents actually preserved food. Not in tin glasses, but in glass jars. How fermentation was done. Fermentation was done for cheeses. Today, cheeses are so processed, they have no value. No nutritional value. We created a society that is really based on high caloric nutrition and not high nutritional nutrition. Okay? So we are going to change that. Not just we, but people that believe in this and people that believe in scanners. And the scanners, I'm quite certain that we will not be the only scanner in the market. And I'm quite certain that this scanner, this idea of the spectroscopy, is going to be integrated into phones, integrated into, you name it, appliances. And people are going to scan not just food, but their furniture, their fabrics, their walls for mold, their skin for bacteria, their veins for cholesterol, and so on and so on. So just a futuristic view, but one that makes the consumer more responsible and more knowledgeable about what they eat. Okay? So, connecting food sources and individuals, and effectively forcing a local agriculture and agrarian urbanism. So urbanism where, in fact, the food is grown locally, on top of roofs, in gardens, inside. I just came back from a talk a TEDx talk in Zwolle, in Holland, and it's amazing to go there because, first of all, you don't see a car, you just see bicycles. And then I was introduced to a community of farmers. These farmers had connected their farms, 50,000 kilometer connection on the farms with geothermal connections. One farmer was growing strawberries organically, and so she needed to go really deep with a geothermal connection and then up to warm it. The next guy was growing, I forget if it was potatoes or some zucchini or whatever. He did not need that much heat, so they connected the pipes would go not as deep to the deep on the earth, a bit higher and up again. So all these farms, 50 kilometers of farms connected, growing food in the middle of the winter, connected geothermally, and they made a whole path whereby people could come in one day in the morning, shop from place to place, farm to farm to farm to farm, and at the end of the day have your produce locally grown and organically grown. It was amazing. I was really impressed. But things like that will show up in the world. And they'll be good. Finally, we'll be able to bring back some sense into this globalization and create sustainable communities. Communities that don't depend so much on sources from outside. So I love macarons. I'm half French. My mother is French. My father is Brazilian. So macarons is actually a typical thing. You never know if they have gluten and you never know if they have dyes. Sometimes they put natural dyes and they don't put gluten. Other times, a simple icing sugar put in a macaron. Egg whites, okay? And sometimes people use icing sugar, but they don't check icing sugar, and icing sugar often has gluten because people put, and it doesn't say on the label, by the way, because manufacturers use a little bit of flour to keep the icing sugar from gluing it to each other. Okay? So that's basically what we do. We provide the most relevant information about food, and that's my new startup. It's 2 years old, the company. We incorporated in February 1st, 2013, after 6 months of already working at the project. And we spent so far close to $2 million in R&D, and hopefully by this year we're actually coming to the market. We are already with the delivery for these betas, which will be in the next few months, but they are still clunky, and they are for only people that actually pre-signed up with us as beta testers to help us build the database, and then ideally and hopefully by the fall we are on the shelves with our telspec scanner. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. That was fascinating. Don't go anywhere. We're going to take questions, lots of questions, hopefully. Yes.
Whereabouts do you plan to sell them
Well, okay, so the demand has been all over the world, so we intend to sell them all over the world, but in places like the Philippines or Asia, we don't have yet the database, the food database. So, and I don't know if everybody knows this, but for instance, in China, 250,000 ingredients exist in China that don't exist in North American food. And in 10 years, that 250,000 will be 500,000. You know, so we need to build local partnerships to get that food. We are just in the process of building one that allows us to get food from Brazil and Spain. And we are actively talking to groups in China, groups in Japan, groups in all over the world. I get phone calls in the middle of the night from Middle East, and many times, and the typical questions I get is, does it do pork? and I mean, I've gotten a few like this at 2 o'clock, and I go like, excuse me, what does and what is pork? like I sound like an idiot, but essentially, yeah, I think we intend to sell it globally, initially with North America and European focus. Yeah.
Where would you sell it out of, like pharmacies? What stores would you be able to find?
Yeah, it's a good question. We have in our site a little banner that says "Partner with us," and we are gathering right now distribution requests. We have so far over 2,000 distribution requests. Almost from every single possible country. Sometimes I go like, what is that country again? What is that city? Distribution. The problem with distribution, from my experience before, is that you need to control price. And if you have many distributors, you end up by not controlling price. So we are right now looking, as much as we would love to have these small distributors, we are looking at actually partnering with large distributors that give us a larger reach. In some countries, pharmacies make a lot of sense. Other countries, it does not make sense. Pharmacy will come up with thinking it's a medical device if we associate this. Right now, this is not a medical device. It will not be a medical device for a few years, but it will be eventually a medical device. Why is it not a medical device? Well, because we need to build a very strong database, and that's the main reason. And by bringing it to the consumers, that will be happening because consumers scan. Every time someone scans, we're going to enter in our database. Okay. Once we have a lot of scans, we'll be able to address the accuracy of the algorithm. The algorithm right now is between 85 to 97% accurate, depending on the ingredient. Gluten, for instance, has 97% accuracy. Now, if you are dead allergic to something, 97% of accuracy is not good enough. And we actually say to people that are dead allergic to something, please do not rely on this instrument as your only source of precaution. Just use it as a precaution. Very good for being in a restaurant where there is icing sugar and detecting if there is gluten. Not very good if you didn't scan a part of the food, like say you have a complex food and you didn't scan where there was the peanut, you scan just this side, it's not going to tell you the peanut. Right, so it's also how people scan. We are only reading what we scan. We're not reading the full thing, right? And that's another thing that we have to educate the consumer. Yep.
I have a two-part question. My first question is, how detailed will the scan be with regards to specific ingredients? And my second question is, do you think you'll face any pressure from multinational food manufacturers when it comes to specific ingredients, because they might want to keep secrets and unique ingredients on the product?
Coca-Cola, right? Okay, Coca-Cola Ventures has approached us.
But you don't do liquids yet.
No, and of course, I actually went to the meeting with Coca-Cola, and I put my foot on my mouth. As a good entrepreneur, I said, "Oh, gee, I'm so surprised we are in this meeting." And then I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I guess I shouldn't have said that." And Coca-Cola is trying to change. They realize that people associate them with diabetes. They realize that they have contributed to that. They may not acknowledge it, but they realize, and they're trying to change so that they make it beneficial to people, their resources too. And they have invested in several companies that are, So I was surprised. We were invited. We didn't knock at their door. They asked us to go there. The meeting went really well. In fact, the CEO of the division that we were meeting with got up and shook hands and then embraced me. He was this tall, so it was kind of an awkward moment, but. The answer to your question on the second question is really that I think multinationals prefer to know if something is going to be exposed beforehand than to have to deal with a crisis. I mean, and I got that answer from actually a large manufacturer, which I cannot name, and they told me, no, we prefer to partner with you guys and know beforehand that a certain toxin exists there and not having to deal with the media. Sometimes having to deal with the media and then proving that it isn't there costs us fortunes. So the second part, in terms of how many ingredients right now, as I said, we are bringing into the market with the 5 top allergens, with the macronutrients, proteins, fats, carbohydrates, with calories, and the different sugars. Right now, different algorithms test different ingredients. And our accuracy depends really on the number of scans. With gluten, we've trained our gluten algorithm with, I think, 37,200 scans for gluten and 37,200 scans for non-gluten, and our accuracy is 97. It's all big data. Behind this is all big data. I don't know if I answer your question, but yeah. Yeah?
I'm not sure how, it was a great presentation by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
But the technical side, I'm kind of confused, not that I'm an expert, but the piton is so it's basically reads the electronic magnetic signature of the product, the material, correct?
It reads a spectrometer essentially reads the wavelength that the photon is coming in and how many photons have arrived at that wavelength. So
it's reflected through these materials, and every single every single molecule has their unique signature, therefore you can detect them.
That's correct.
However, according to my knowledge, this electromagnetic power is highly related to the heat.
That's correct.
Of the product.
That's correct.
So basically, if you
That's correct.
take the same product when it's warm and cold,
Yeah.
it's going to be different.
That's correct. And so right now we have only databases for room temperature. We actually started databases for frozen foods. Okay.
So there should be some kind of a restriction in this.
Yeah,
temperature.
yeah. But it's a question of building it. That's correct. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a question.
Oh, there's another question.
And how much are you planning to sell for?
We have pre-sales on the site, so people right now are buying it. I think it's, don't get me, 345 or something like that for the full scanner, and for this beta tester and the full scanner at the end, it's 1,500, I think, or something like that. This is much more expensive because this is hand done. This is manufacturing by hand, assembled by hand. The other ones are not. I don't know if the price will be that. I suspect it will not. I suspect the price will be much higher than what we're pre-selling. We're pre-selling to get database users. We're not pre-selling to really sell it. I suspect when it's in the market, it'll probably be about $500, $600. And like the phones, it will come down on price eventually.
What are you forecasting for sales?
I can't answer that question. I do know it, but I can't answer that question, sorry. It's confidential.
Where are they being made in Canada?
No. The Canadian scene is a sad scene. And not only the product is not made in Canada, Neither that hand assembly is not made in Canada, is US, and the manufacturing of the mass manufacture will be in Taiwan. So no. And furthermore, there is very few specialists in spectroscopy in Canada, so we had to be robbing people from all over the world. Today just the whole company was up in arms and jumping everybody because we just robbed one of the top scientists from Spain, and Spain is really, really advanced in this area, and he just joined us today officially, so everybody was literally in their chairs jumping up. You know, hey, Pablo joined us. So unfortunately, no. I have been approached to manufacture this in Canada, but it doesn't make sense because there's an optical component there. It's not just electronics, there's an optical component. It's quite difficult unless there is some experience behind.
So you'll have scientists on board, like, will be working for the company only?
Sorry?
Like you said, the scientists just joined.
Yeah,
Are they going to be dedicated to the
Yeah.
purpose that you're at?
yeah.
Or will you just be using
No.
people from...
No. We have full-time people. We have full-time people, and Pablo just joined us as full-time person. And we just were invited, actually, the nice news is we were invited by the European Commissioner. There is a program in Europe called Horizon 2020, so, and this is for food and health. And we have now 7 groups that approach us to work with them, and we are working with them if they are granted their grants for things such as diabetes. And they're going to scan with our scanners, and malnutrition in the elderly, scanning with our scanners. That's a project from Italy. The other project from diabetes is from a project from UK, and so on. So there's different projects happening in Europe because Europeans are really concerned about health and nutritional science and the relationship. And so we have been approached literally by a lot of these groups saying, can we borrow your scanners? Can you be part of this consortium of clinicians and university professors to use your scanner? Yeah.
More questions?
Oh, yeah. Well.
Since this is concerning health, did you ever try to reach out any of these pharmaceutical companies, like, or the retailers like Shoppers Drug Mart on this matter?
Shoppers Drug Mart, we did speak with a fellow that has distribution in Shoppers and distribution in Walgreens. I don't know if that's the channel necessarily to go to. I'm actually more inclined that the channel should be something like electronics initially, and eventually we're closer to being a medical device. We get into the Shoppers. Did we approach pharmaceutical? I've been running a company that is a little bit upside down to the usual companies. We are totally not proactive in terms of approaching anyone. People just approach us. And because we can't deal with how many people approach us, we never have the time to actually approach the right people, or maybe the right people just come our way. So no, but I have talked with Sanofi's, I have presented to Johnson & Johnson's, I have presented to Novartis, I mean the list goes on. But I never approached them, they approached us. And the reaction has been, come back when it's a medical device, when you're close to the medical device. So yeah.
So are they preempting a situation where they're approaching you now so that they get a better grip on it before there is any kind of criticism on their manufacturing and production?
Oh, the food manufacturers? Yes,
Are they preempting
some.
this?
Yes, that's correct.
Because it's going to be far more difficult for them to justify without
That's correct.
information.
They also want to watch and see, right? Let's watch and see how this takes off, see how people accept this, and how many people start using it, and then we have the connection already made, easier to jump in. We actually had a term sheet for an investor from a food manufacturer. But because we have another term sheet from another group, which is not a food manufacturer, I think we should stay agnostic on this one. Because if we start joining ourselves with a specific way of treating food or a specific way of dealing with health, we're going to get in trouble. I mean, I have my own personal opinions about counting calories, but I'm not going to say them. I mean, I can say them here, but I'm not going to say them. And I have my personal opinions about how food should be grown, and my personal opinions about what food we should eat. But that should not be part of the business. So it's better to stay agnostic.
You can't control it to that extent, and people can't eat anything, you'll stop eating everything if you're going to be measuring every piece of food that you're eating. Something or the other is going to be in everything that you look at. Even carrots are not good, they've got too much sugar. And people who are on a health bench, they eat carrots.
Yeah.
They eat too many carrots, ingesting too much sugar.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there has to be a limit.
No, absolutely, absolutely, and that's the reason why going to the market with allergens and tracking calories and tracking macronutrients, it's really good. It's really good as it is. I mean, we could go insane and go forever researching, and we eventually, I mean, as ideally, we put out more stuff. We do want to get to the point of being able to give people the ability to avoid pesticides.
No, and also
Yeah.
things like cookies and stuff, you know,
Yeah.
people don't know what they're eating and how much is going in, so great.
Yeah, yeah,
If you really want to check something out for yourself, that's fine.
yeah,
You know, it should be a personal effort,
yeah,
and companies should be responsible
yeah.
for what they're producing.
Yeah.
So in as much as that, you'll be doing a great service, but you can't expect it to become an international activity where people just look at food and say, oh my God, should I be eating it?
Well, I think for those people that are diabetic or celiac or with
They should.
yeah, they should, and
But
they
they
will.
don't.
They will.
I know.
And but they will. I mean, this will be so integrated into their phones that they will say, okay, I have to track down what I'm eating, and they, instead of writing down things, right?
Also
Yeah.
obesity.
Yep. Well, those will be harder probably to convince.
It would help.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Easy.
Yes, thank you very much, Earl. One more question. Do you ever consider another implementation? Because, for example, I was studying in Finland, and then Finland gets oranges from Portugal. Basically, what they were doing, they were just randomly choosing some of the examples, sending it to the laboratory, taking 6 hours to 12 hours to check that the quality is the same.
Yeah.
Sending like, I can imagine that if you, instead of making like one individual machine there, if you would make it like a big MR machine, some kind of a
Yep.
big area, and they are just floating all the food
Yep.
through it.
But that company exists already. It's called Foss, and it's in Norway, and they have big machines, and they test food for B2B. You see, my company here, I not so focused and motivated on the money. I'm much more motivated on the fact of trying to help people like my daughter, and therefore it has to be consumer product. Yes, we have requests all the time. Can you do it for this? Can you do it for that? This morning I had a request from Vietnam, from the police in Vietnam.
Okay, fantastic. And, next question. If this is not about the money, what makes them, like if this product is going great, they have a better technology and they have a better database then, so what makes them stop to produce similar kind of products?
No, they don't. They don't have a better technology. They have a larger spectrometer and they use chemometrics, and we don't. They use traditional ways of looking at the spectrum, and we don't do that. We don't use regression analysis, linear algebra, and all that traditional statistic methods. We use artificial intelligence. So that is really what our IP is. We filed for a patent. I didn't say this here, but we filed for a patent. The patent is going to be published now in March or April. That's really where our IP is. It doesn't reside on that box.
Last question then.
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence.
Last question.
Yeah. Artificial intelligence, I have been working
Yeah.
as a computer engineer, which is a decision mechanism. So if you say that you are using artificial intelligence, basically you are not just providing the facts, you are making some kind of a decision out of the facts and providing to the customer. Did I understand correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you very much. It was a fascinating talk.